Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to tell you something that could change the direction of your life forever. Not tomorrow, not next year, tonight. Because when God steps in, when the Almighty walks into the room of your heart, your life will never, ever be the same again. Some of you listening right now feel exhausted, tired of pretending you're strong, tired of fighting battles nobody sees, tired of holding the broken pieces of your life together with shaking hands. And maybe you've whispered quietly when no one was around, God, if you're real, step into my life. My friend, He hears you, He sees you, and He's closer than your heartbeat. Let me tell you something straight. It doesn't matter where you've been. It matters where God can take you. It doesn't matter what you've done. It matters what God can make out of you. And it doesn't matter how dark your night has been, because God steps in with a sunrise that never fades. When human strength runs out, that is the moment heaven leans closest to the earth. That is the moment when God steps in, not because you are strong, but because you finally admit that you can't do it alone. Many people think God looks for perfect people, powerful people, people who have everything figured out. But the truth is far more beautiful. God waits for the moment when you whisper, Lord, I can't carry this anymore, because that whisper becomes the doorway for His strength to walk in. Think about it. As long as you're trying to be your own hero, you'll never know the power of God. As long as you're convincing the world that your smile is real, your heart will never know real comfort. As long as you're pretending to be strong, you'll never feel the arms of the one who is infinitely stronger than you. There's a moment in every person's life when they hit a wall. For some, it's the doctor's report they never saw coming. For others, it's the job that suddenly vanished. For some, it's betrayal, heartbreak, or a dream that collapsed after years of effort. And in those moments, we cry out, why now? Why me? Why this? But hear this clearly. When your strength ends, God's strength begins. Imagine a man who spent years building a business. He poured his heart, time, savings, and hope into it. But one day, everything fell apart. Bad decisions, economic pressure, mistakes he couldn't undo. He tried to fix it himself. He stayed up nights, running numbers, making plans, pretending he was okay, until one night, sitting in his car, he broke down and whispered, God, I don't know what to do anymore. And in that moment, not with thunder, not with fire, but with peace deep in his soul, God stepped in. The man didn't suddenly become a millionaire again, but God gave him what he truly needed: clarity, direction, and courage. A few months later, through opportunities he never expected, he rebuilt his life from the ground up. And he said, I lost everything that made me proud, so God could give me everything that made me strong. My friend, do you see it? God doesn't wait for you to be powerful. He steps in when you're powerless, because His strength shines brightest in the cracks of your weakness. Look at daily life. A mother raising children alone, doing everything she can, working, cooking, cleaning, praying, but feeling tired in her soul. Then one night, with tears on her pillow, she says, God, please help me. And suddenly, strength comes. Not dramatic, not loud, but steady. She wakes up with a strength that surprises even her. That is God stepping in. A student struggling with anxiety, drowning in pressure, comparing themselves to everyone around. They hide it behind jokes, behind smiles, behind late night scrolling. But one day they say, God, I can't carry this weight anymore. And suddenly, a peace settles over their heart, a peace they can't explain. That is God stepping in. A man battling addiction, fighting the same silent war every day. He tries again and again to break free, but falls back into the same trap. One night he kneels and says, God, I'm tired of losing. And in that surrender, in that raw, honest cry, God steps in, not to judge him, but to strengthen him, to lift him, to restore what was lost inside him. Here is the truth that shakes the soul. Your breaking point is not your ending. It's God's beginning. The moment when your hands let go is the moment when His hands take over. God is not impressed by human strength. He is moved by human surrender. The world teaches you to push harder, pretend longer, be tougher. But God whispers, my child, let me carry the weight you were never designed to carry. And if you could hear heaven speak right now, it would tell you, you don't have to hold it all together. You don't have to be strong all the time. Let me step in. Let me fight for you. Let me lift you. Because when your strength reaches its limit, that is when His limitless strength finally becomes real in your life. God often walks into the places we try hardest to hide, the broken places, the wounded places, the places we're embarrassed to admit even to ourselves. We think brokenness disqualifies us. We think pain pushes God away. But in reality, Your broken places are the very places where God's glory desires to shine the brightest. Many people try to hide their scars, but scars are not signs of shame. Scars are signs that something tried to destroy you and failed. They are evidence that you survived what others thought would kill you. Some of the most powerful transformations happen in moments that look like defeat. Think of a person who lost everything: jobs, savings, relationships. At first, they felt like life had ended. They felt crushed, abandoned, invisible. But when they finally whispered, "God, I don't understand, but I'm here," he stepped into that broken space and began to rebuild them, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Over time, the same person who once cried, "Why me?" began to say, "Now I understand. God was shaping me in the dark." Brokenness is not a burial ground. It is a planting ground. When a seed enters the soil, it looks like it disappears. It looks like it's been swallowed, crushed, buried, but that burial is not death. It is transformation. In the same way, God uses the soil of your brokenness to grow something stronger, deeper, more meaningful inside you. What looks like the end is often the beginning of something magnificent. Imagine a woman whose heart was shattered by betrayal. She gave everything she had to someone who walked away without explanation. She tried to act strong in public, but inside she felt like a glass vase that had slipped from the highest shelf. One night, sitting on the floor, she said, "God, I don't know how to live with this pain." And suddenly, not instantly, but gently, God began to mend her heart. Slowly, strength appeared where weakness used to be. Confidence grew where insecurity once lived. She started smiling again, not because of the person who left, but because of the God who stepped in. Her broken heart became her testimony. Brokenness is not the end. Brokenness is the place where God begins his greatest work. It is in the moment when you say, "I can't fix this," that God says, "Watch what I can do." He never wastes pain. He never wastes tears. Every heartbreak, every loss, every disappointment becomes a brushstroke in the masterpiece he is painting with your life. You see, light shines brightest through cracks, and God often breaks us open so his light can pour out through every fracture. There's a young man who struggled with failure. Every dream he pursued seemed to collapse in front of him. He began to believe he wasn't meant for anything great. But one day, sitting alone after another failed attempt, he whispered, "God, if there's something in me worth saving, show me." And in that prayer of surrender, God stepped in. He gave him ideas he never thought of, connections he didn't expect, confidence he never felt before. The very failure that once broke him became the foundation for the success he later built. God turned his broken place into a place of beauty. Brokenness reveals things strength never can. When everything falls apart, you finally see who holds everything together. When you lose what you thought you needed, you discover who you actually need. When the world walks away, God steps closer. It is in the shattered moments that you hear him whisper, "I am still here." Your broken places are not places of shame. They are places where God is preparing to shine his glory. He steps into your story, not to highlight the pain, but to reveal the purpose behind the pain. He takes the very things that were meant to destroy you and turns them into the very things that define you. God does not step into your life to condemn you, humiliate you, or remind you of every mistake you've made. He steps in to transform you from the inside, from the core, from the places no one else can reach. People may judge you for your past. Society may label you by your failures. Even your own mind may whisper, "You'll never change." But God looks at you with a different set of eyes. He doesn't see who you were. He sees who you can become. He doesn't see the ashes. He sees the beauty he can create out of those ashes. When God steps in, he comes with the power to turn a sinner into a servant, a broken soul into a living testimony, a wandering heart into a warrior of purpose. Many people think change starts with self-effort, with trying harder, with pretending to be good enough. But real transformation begins when you stop trying to fix yourself and finally say, "God, I need you to change me." That is the moment heaven begins to work. Transformation is not about polishing your old life. It's about God giving you a new one. It's not about repainting the walls. It's about God rebuilding the foundation. Imagine a man who spent years drowning in anger. Little things triggered him. He broke relationships, damaged trust, and hurt the people he loved most. One day, after losing another friendship because of his temper, he sat alone and said, "God, am I always going to be this person? And in that honest moment, God stepped in, not with lightning, not with guilt, but with a whisper, "I can make you new." Slowly, the anger began to lose its grip. Peace started taking root where rage once lived. Compassion replaced irritation. People around him noticed the difference before he did. His change wasn't self-made, it was God-made. That is transformation. Think of a woman who felt unworthy her entire life. Every compliment felt like a lie. Every mirror reminded her of her failures. She went through her days convinced she wasn't good enough, smart enough, lovable enough. But one night, she broke down and cried, "God, I'm tired of feeling worthless." And that night, God stepped in. He didn't just patch her insecurities, he shattered them. He told her, not through a voice in the sky, but through a deep certainty in her spirit, "You are loved, you are chosen, you are fearfully and wonderfully made." Over time, she stood taller, walked with confidence, smiled with authenticity. She didn't just see herself differently, she became different. That is transformation. Transformation is God taking the pieces of your past and building something beautiful with them. It's Him replacing shame with strength, fear with faith, confusion with clarity. When God steps in, He doesn't ask you to hide your struggles. He uses them to shape your purpose. He doesn't ask for perfection. He asks for permission. And when you say, "God, change me," He begins a work so deep that even you will look back and say, "I can't believe that was me." Look at everyday life. A young man trapped in addiction cries out for help. A woman who hasn't forgiven herself for years finally bows her head and whispers, "God, make me new." A student who feels lost in identity finally says, "God, show me who I am." In each of these moments, transformation begins, not because they became strong, but because they became surrendered. You are not defined by what you once did. You are not labeled by what broke you. You are not chained to what happened yesterday. God specializes in rewriting stories that the world has given up on. He turns the weak into warriors. He turns the defeated into conquerors. He turns the overlooked into the chosen. When He steps in, He doesn't remind you of who you were. He reveals who you were always meant to be. God waits at the door of your heart, not with force, not with pressure, but with a gentle knock that only you can hear. He waits for your yes, not because He needs permission to be powerful, but because He respects the freedom He gave you. He could overwhelm your life with His glory, yet He chooses instead to stand patiently, whispering, "My child, will you let me in?" This is the mystery of God's love. He is all-powerful, yet He never invades. He invites. And the moment you open the door, even if it opens only a crack, light begins to pour into places you thought would always remain dark. Some people imagine that opening your heart to God means performing some spiritual ritual, having perfect words, or cleaning up your life first. But God is not waiting for polished prayers. He is waiting for an honest heart. You don't have to come to Him with strength. You come to Him with need. You don't open the door with perfection. You open it with sincerity. Even a trembling, uncertain, broken-hearted, "God, I need you," is enough for heaven to move. Think of a young man who grew up hiding every emotion, every mistake, every fear behind a smile. He convinced everyone that he was strong, confident, unshakable. But late at night, when the noise faded, the silence grew heavy. One night, tired of pretending, he said softly, "God, if you're real, I need you to help me. I can't do this anymore." That one sentence, whispered in vulnerability, was all it took. God stepped in, not with explosions, but with a peace that wrapped around his heart like a warm blanket. He began to feel clarity where confusion once lived. Doors opened in his life that he never had the courage to knock on. That simple moment of opening the heart changed everything. Or think of a mother who carried burdens she never shared with anyone. She worked long hours, worried about her children, fought private battles that drained her spirit. Every day she told herself, "Be strong." But inside, she felt like she was slowly collapsing. One evening, exhausted beyond words, she sat at the edge of her bed and whispered, God, I don't know how to keep going. That whisper became her doorway. God didn't remove every challenge overnight, but He strengthened her in ways she'd never known. She began to see hope in places she once saw despair. She walked through difficulties with a new courage that surprised even her. That is what happens when you open your heart. Some people fear opening their heart because they're afraid of being exposed. They think, what if God sees how messed up I am? But He already knows, and He loves you anyway. He does not stand at the door with judgment in His hands. He stands there with healing, forgiveness, and purpose. Imagine someone knocking on your door, not to criticize your messy room, but to help clean it, restore it, decorate it, and turn it into something beautiful. That is what God does with the human heart. Others hesitate because they think, my faith is too weak. But even the smallest opening can let God's greatness in. A tiny crack in a curtain can brighten an entire room. A small keyhole can unlock a massive door. A single step toward God brings you into a place where He takes thousands of steps toward you. Opening your heart is not about religion, it's about relationship. It's about allowing the one who created you to guide you, strengthen you, and heal you. It's about welcoming the love that never fails, the peace that never fades, and the purpose that never dies. When you open the door of your heart, you invite God into your fears, your dreams, your wounds, your hopes. You allow Him to rearrange your priorities, renew your thoughts, and revive your soul. And the beautiful truth is this: once you open your heart even a little, God does not tiptoe in. He fills the entire room of your life with His presence. He takes the fragments you've been hiding and turns them into a story worth telling. He takes the questions you've been carrying and replaces them with direction. He takes the emptiness inside you and fills it with meaning, because He never needed your perfection. He only waited for your invitation. When God steps into a life, He does not come to make small adjustments or minor improvements. He comes to bring transformation so deep, so undeniable, that nothing remains the same. He doesn't shift things softly. He redirects destinies. He doesn't patch up the old life. He breathes a new one into existence. His presence is not a gentle breeze that brushes past you. It's a mighty wind that lifts you into the purpose you were created for. When God steps in, the things that once controlled you lose their power. The fears that once paralyzed you lose their voice, and the limits that once defined you lose their grip. Picture a man who lived his life feeling ordinary, invisible, unnoticed. He went to work, came home, slept, and repeated the cycle for years. Deep inside, he believed his life didn't matter. But one night, while sitting alone, he whispered in desperation, God, if you have something for me, I want to know. In that moment of honesty, God stepped in, not with a dramatic flash, but with a quiet awakening in his spirit. Over the next months, he began to feel a fire he never knew before. Talents he had buried resurfaced. Confidence he never had began to grow. A dream he once thought was impossible became something he suddenly felt compelled to pursue. And when people saw him walking with passion and purpose, they said, what happened to him? The answer was simple. God stepped in. When God steps in, identity changes. A person who once saw themselves as a failure begins to see themselves as chosen. Someone who felt small realizes they were created to carry something great. Someone who believed they were broken beyond repair begins to see healing rise from the ashes. God doesn't just rewrite your story. He rewrites your sense of self. He removes the labels placed on you by your past, by people, and even by your own fears. He replaces them with His truth. You are mine. You are called. You are loved. You are strengthened. Think of a woman who carried sadness like a shadow. Nothing seemed to satisfy her heart. She had achievements. She had possessions. She had people around her, but she felt empty. One afternoon, in a moment of exhaustion, she whispered, God, if you're real, fill the places inside me nothing else can fill. That simple sentence opened the door for God to step in, and suddenly she began to experience peace so deep, so steady, that her friends noticed before she did. She started waking up with purpose. She started seeing beauty in moments she once ignored. The emptiness that haunted her for years was replaced with a joy she could not explain. When God steps in, He fills every void that life leaves behind. When God steps in, direction changes. Paths that once looked confusing suddenly make sense. Roads that seemed blocked begin to open. Doors that were shut tight swing wide with opportunity. People who walked in circles for years finally feel a sense of clarity guiding them forward. God does not lead with confusion. He leads with purpose. He does not speak in chaos. He speaks with clarity. When He steps in, even the hardest decisions become clear because you begin to walk not in your own wisdom, but in His. When God steps in, strength rises. A person who once shook under pressure becomes someone who stands firm. Someone who once ran from problems becomes someone who faces challenges with bravery. Someone who once allowed fear to dominate their life becomes someone who walks with courage. And even when storms come, they stand, not because they are strong, but because the one inside them is stronger than anything around them. When God steps in, the atmosphere of your life shifts. Peace begins to dominate where anxiety once lived. Hope grows where despair once sat. Light shines where darkness once ruled. People look at you and say, "You're different." And you realize it's not because life became easier, but because God became greater in you. When God steps in, everything changes. Not gradually, not partially, but completely. Your heart changes. Your thoughts change. Your direction changes. Your relationships change. Your dreams change. Your entire life begins to reflect the power of the one who now walks with you, within you, and before you. As we come to this moment, I want you to pause just for a breath and realize something profound. You are standing on the edge of a new beginning, not a small shift, not a gentle improvement, a beginning that can reshape the rest of your life. Because when God steps in, nothing stays the same. The man you were, the woman you were, the broken places you carried, the storms you feared, they all bow before the presence of the one who holds universes in His hands, yet chooses to hold your heart with tenderness. And maybe right now you feel something stirring deep inside you, a pull, a whisper, a tiny spark fighting to become a flame. Don't ignore that. That's God stepping toward you. That's heaven leaning in your direction. That's your future calling your name. Because every great move of God begins with a simple, trembling yes. A yes that doesn't know how. A yes that doesn't have all the answers. A yes that simply says, "Lord, step in." Listen to me. Your past cannot stop God. Your mistakes cannot disqualify God. Your weakness cannot limit God. Your fear cannot delay God. When He decides to rewrite your story, nothing, absolutely nothing, can stand in His way. The chains you've carried for years, He can break them in a moment. The guilt that has weighed on you like a mountain, He can lift it with a whisper. The emptiness inside you that nothing in this world has been able to fill, He can overflow it with peace that surpasses understanding. And maybe you've been waiting for the perfect moment. Maybe you've been telling yourself, one day I'll change. One day I'll get stronger. One day I'll fix myself. But hear this with all your heart. One day is a lie that keeps people chained forever. Transformation doesn't begin with someday. It begins with surrender today. God isn't asking for perfection. He's asking for permission. He's not waiting for you to become worthy. He's waiting for you to believe that He already loves you. There comes a moment in every life when you realize that the life you're living is too small for the purpose God placed inside you. A moment when the comfort zone becomes a cage. A moment when your soul whispers, "You were made for more." And tonight, right here, right now, that moment is yours. This is your burning bush. This is your midnight encounter. This is your turning point. This is your divine interruption. Look back for a moment. Look at everything that tried to break you but failed. Look at every storm that should have drowned you but didn't. Look at every valley that you walked through even when you didn't know how your feet kept moving. You didn't survive by accident. You didn't endure by coincidence. You are here because God kept you alive for something greater than you can imagine. Your survival is proof that your destiny is still unfolding. And now God stands at the door of your heart saying, "Let me in. Let me heal what you've been afraid to touch. Let me rebuild what you've been trying to forget. Let me guide you to places you never believed were possible. Let me show you the life I dreamed of for you before you were even born." My This is the moment where you choose what kind of story you will live from this day forward. The moment where you say, no more running, no more pretending, no more settling. The moment where heaven hears your voice and hell loses its hold. So rise, lift your head, lift your heart, lift your voice, and declare with courage, God, step into my life, step into my home, step into my mind, step into my future. Because with you, everything changes. And may this truth burn in your soul forever. When God steps in, your life will never be the same again.